Hey guys, Brian Westcott here with Westcott Woodworks. I'm going to be making a video today showing how to route out and cut a sinkhole for a drop-in sink. To do that, I'll use a jigsaw to cut the rough size of the sink that's going to be going in, and then we're going to use a template and go back and cut it to exact size with this flush trim router bit using a template and a router. So the bit that I'm using, if you're interested, is the Freud 5118. It's a top bearing flush trim bit. You can use it to trim a lot of laminates and different things, and I'll show you how that works here in just a little bit. Okay, to answer the first question I'm sure everybody's got for me, which is, why aren't you just using the template that came with the sink? Well, I didn't buy this sink. This came out of a house that I'm doing a home renovation for. They want to reuse the sink. It's in good condition. They're just replacing the plumbing, the faucet, and all those things. So this is something that you can run into a lot if you're doing home renovations or trying to reuse items in your house that you don't want to replace because they're still in good shape. So what I did is I just made a template of my own. This is a template made for a 22 by 33 inch sink. So I can use this template multiple times as I have to cut out sinkholes for a drop-in sink. All you do to make the template is there's this lip that runs around the sink, the top, the bottom, and both sides. You just measure what those distances are, mark them out, and cut them out with the jigsaw, and make sure that you cut a straight line. Once you've done that, you want to make sure that this template fits on the sink. Okay, that's the whole reason really I make this template. This piece of hardboard I think costs somewhere about $10 or $11 for a 4x8 sheet, and that's a lot cheaper than a countertop, especially one if you've glued it together and made it all yourself. You don't want to go and cut a hole and find out, hey, I just cut this 3 inches in the wrong direction. That's why they say measure twice, cut once. While on this, I'm going to measure twice, cut once, and I'm going to use a template just to make sure. The other reason I like to is this is going to be a sink and a kitchen island. And so I've got a sink cabinet and I've got another cabinet next to it. I just want to make sure that I've got this thing lined up so I can see exactly where this hole is going to go before I cut it. A lot of those templates that come with the sink I don't even use because they're just giant pieces of paper and it covers up half of the top and you can't see where you're cutting. So I like to just have this so I can clamp it down to the table, draw it all out exactly where I want it, and then I'll go and cut it with the jigsaw, and then we're going to go back and use the flush trim router bit to cut it to the exact size. First thing you do before you cut it, you want to make sure that you drill a hole at the bottom right corner and top left corner, or bottom left corner and top right corner. Whatever you want to do, just make sure they're corners that are diagonally across from where you're at, so that way you can jigsaw it this way, then this way, and then come from the other corner and do the same thing. Once you have drilled both of the holes in the opposing corners of where the sink is going to be, you can use a jigsaw and go back and cut out the bulk of the material on all four sides, and then we're going to go back and clean it all up with the router bit. For the sake of the time of the video, I didn't show you cutting out the other two sides, but I just cut them both the same way. And I didn't even go back and trim out the corners. When you're running a jigsaw, you can't start directly in the corner. You drill your hole, you cut down, then you come back and finish the cut. We won't have to do that. We can trim all that with the router, so it's not really a big deal. The other thing I failed to mention earlier was you put your template down. I've got different lines drawn out here of where the cabinets are going to be, so you can do that if you want, but you put the template down. You do want to draw roughly where it's going to be and cut inside that line, and we'll go back with this template and trim it out with that flush trim router bit so that it's to the right size. So we can go ahead and pop this sink cutout out of here, depending on what type of wood that you used. If you made your countertop out of a hardwood like maple or something, you actually have a decent sized cutting board if you wanted to trim that up and go from there, but that's for a different day. So we'll go ahead and put the template on here, clamp it down, and route it out. All right, now that you've got the template clamped down, don't forget, get in a rush and not put a couple of blocks under here. I think this bit is 1.5 inches long, so you don't want to push down and plunge through this and cut into your table. You're just going to make more work for yourself that way. But that being said, let's talk router speed just a minute. This bit is not a huge bit, and we already rough cut it to the size with the jigsaw. The max speed this is recommended to go is 24,000 RPMs. And so I usually, this router is a 2.25 horsepower. I think it's 25,000 is its max RPM. And so I back it down a little bit. You know, it's the max setting, but this is a soft wood. So I'm not going to push it to the max here. The other thing, if you make a lot of cutting boards or tabletops, different things, where you're routing the outside edges, you're always moving, you know, in a circular motion that's counterclockwise. Okay, that makes it so that you're not that you're going against what the router bit is spinning. If you go with it, this thing is liable to take you for a ride, and you don't want to do that. Now, when you're cutting the inside of something, as we're going to do with this sink template, you go the opposite way. So you're going to go clockwise for the same reason. You don't want this thing to take off on you while you're routing it out. So get your eye and ear protection on, and then route it out. As you're routing this out with the template, always make sure to keep the top bearing of the router bit pushed up firmly against the template and keep the router completely plunged down so that you don't cut through the template itself. Okay, now that we've got that all routed out, you can remove the template, unclamp it there, and sometimes you might have a little bit of stuff around the edge you can just clear out there. But it's time to make sure that the sink fits in here, so the moment of truth, it shouldn't be a problem though, because we measured multiple times and made that template. So just kind of drop it in here, and then it fits. It's all the way down. That lip is underneath. You can check it and see if it's got any give. Front to back is tight in there. Side to side has maybe about an 1/8 inch give, which is fine. I don't see any gap all the way around there. So at this point, it fits in there good. So you're ready to take it back out, sand on it, stain it, finish it, whatever you're going to do to it, because it's ready to go for the sink. And again, just kind of to wrap everything up, I make this template out of hardboard because it's a whole lot cheaper to cut a piece of this and have the sink not fit than to mess up the entire countertop. So I just cut a template and just hang on to this in case you ever run into it again. It's pretty thin, it doesn't take up a whole lot of space. Being that it's so thin, it's easy to cut these out and to route the edges and smooth them up and everything, get them completely straight so that you can cut them completely straight when you transfer it onto the countertop. So make yourself a template, do that. I cut mine out with the jigsaw first. If you took light passes, you could probably go ahead and just do the whole thing with a router. I just like to rough cut it with the jigsaw first, so that way I'm only going back with the router and just touching it all up to get it completely straight. And to do that, I use the carbide tip top bearing flush trim bit from Freud. And it's a 1 3/4 inches long, so this countertop here is just 1 inch thick. But if you did like a 1.5 inch thick butcher block or anything like that, you can still use the same bit. So it works for multiple applications. So thanks for watching. Check out my other videos on Westcott Woodworks and Home Services, and you can check out my new website at westcottwoodworks.com.